All right, guys, what's up? Welcome to the Ryan Feldman interview. How are you doing, Ryan?
Good. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So today I just want to kind of talk a little bit about, Hustler Live. Obviously, it's been really successful recently, and there's been a lot of things, going on, whether it's the slow rolls or, the guy looking at the other guy's cards, a lot of things going on. So I just want to talk about what all goes into the stream and maybe a little bit about your background, how you got into, the streaming world and all of that. I did watch the previous interview. I think you did an interview 2 years ago with David Tuckman, right? And you talked about the stream and live at the bike and starting that and how you left and all of that. So you don't have to give too many details about that because I know you talked a lot about that. But maybe just start off with kind of a brief background of yourself and then how you got into the streaming world and then how you ended up starting Hustler Live.
Sure. I started off working in sports media, and I took a job at ESPN as a researcher doing stats and information back in 2011. And then I moved out to LA in 2014 to work in the ESPN LA studio working on NBA Countdown. So I did that till 2016. During that time, I was playing a lot of poker. I was always into poker, and I just gradually got more and more into it. And when I moved to LA, it's just there's more card rooms. It's easier to play. There's a lot of poker out here. And then I eventually started commentating a few times at Live at the Bike as well as playing on it. And then 2016, I decided that for a bunch of different reasons, I just didn't feel like staying at ESPN anymore. And so I left and kind of just took a chance. It was like, I'm just going to play poker for a bit, see what happens. And then shortly after that is when the opening came up at Live at the Bike that they needed someone to take over and produce. And so I jumped on that and became one of their owners and the producer of the show, and did that from 2016 to 2019. And then I left there in 2019, and then I started Hustler Casino Live in 2021.
Cool. And one thing I thought was pretty interesting that you talked about, in your previous interview is kind of like taking the big risks. You took a lot of big risks in terms of leaving your job at ESPN, right? You had a good job at ESPN and going to start something with poker. Could you kind of just talk about, what led you to taking these big risks, and if you have any tips and for, or life advice, for other people that may, be in a position where they could take a risk like that, but haven't, or, kind of, I just think it's pretty unique to be able to like, step away from something and try to start something new and kind of like take those risks like you did.
Yeah. So in let's see, in 2000, I guess the first big one was 2016. So yeah, I was at ESPN for 5 years, and like I said, I just kind of wasn't as excited about my job anymore as I was at the beginning. It got kind of corporate. They got rid of some of the managers that were cool, and I got more into poker and all of that. And I don't know. I just felt like the older you get, the less time you have to like take chances and do things that you really want to do. And I'm just like, all right, if I don't do this now, like when can I ever just take a chance to just like play poker and like have fun and and I feel like I feel like you have to do what you want to do, like I feel like life is about, to me, like enjoying what you're doing for a living, enjoying what you're doing. And if you're just like going into a job every day and punching a clock and being miserable, then you're just not going to be happy, And so I've always valued like just doing what I want to do. Even before I worked at ESPN, I wasn't doing well. Like I wasn't making a lot of money, and I was just doing numerous different media related jobs, basketball related jobs, like writing, and I like coached basketball. I wrote for different newspapers. I ran a website. I ran a basketball league. So I just was like, I like basketball, so I'm just going to work in that field. And even though I was not doing that great, I didn't want to like deviate and do something else because that's not what I wanted to do. And I just kept at it and eventually got to ESPN. And then, so when I left, or when I was thinking about leaving there, I'm like, it's a huge risk. Like ESPN's a dream job and people aren't going to understand why I'm leaving, but I just really want to do this. And so I took a chance and it worked out, and the same thing when I left Live at the Bike in 2019 is, we were crushing at that time. We had just had a bunch of big games and we were like peaking in terms of viewership and popularity. And I just wasn't happy with the situation. I wasn't happy with the other owners I was working with. I wasn't happy with how I was being treated in my mind. And, I just was feeling like, man, like I love running shows. I love producing. I love organizing games. I love working with the people, the players. I love building something special, but man, I feel like I could do this on my own and build something way better and be way happier. So, I took that risk, and it took like 2 years basically before we actually, over 2 years from when I decided to leave there to when we actually launched Hustler Casino Live, me and Nick. So, I really believe that you should always like follow your dreams and do what makes you happy. And if you're good enough at it and you work hard enough at it, like you will be successful.
Cool. Yeah. Because you also, you played poker full time for a good amount of time before necessarily, being more involved with Live at the Bike, right? You played poker full time after leaving your job at ESPN?
Well, yeah, it was only for like a few months. It was like a short window. So,
okay.
and it didn't go so well. So, I like left at the wrong time. I had been thinking about all NBA season that year about leaving. And I just kept in my mind though, I was kind of scared and thinking about like, what's going to happen if I don't do well? Do I really want to do this? Whatever. And I just pulled the trigger and I did it after NBA season. I just like right away kind of struggled and was like losing and went on a big downswing like right away. And then I just started after a few months, like just started thinking about like, okay, like what can I do to get back into the industry or, and then that Live at the Bike job popped up. So that was perfect. I'm like, oh, this is great. It's production. It's organizing games. It's poker. Like, this is what I want. I need this one.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just kind of like a lot of just fortunate time and place for me.
Cool. Yeah. So before we get into, moving to Hustler now, there was a lot of interest in, questions about the Live at the Bike situation and how, the drama that happened there and then how you left and how that all ended up unfolding. I know you mentioned, some of the owners, you had some disagreements with the owners because a lot more of the owners got brought in and it didn't seem like they were doing as much work necessarily as you and putting as much effort into it all as you were. Could you just maybe touch on a little bit more on that and kind of just explain the Live at the Bike situation?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the gist of it. Like like I said, we were crushing it and we were doing really well. And I felt like there was 5 of us at the time and I felt like I was doing all of the work for the most part. I felt like everyone wasn't pulling like equal weight. And like the way the pay structure was, I got like the third most and the way the equities worked out. And so I just felt like it wasn't fair. And I kind of just like got frustrated after a while. I kind of realized that just my mentality in business has always been, and I've been involved in a few things, is that like, I just put all of the work and effort into something and I don't like cut myself short and say, oh, well, I worked enough today or I worked enough this weekend. Like I just go all out to build something until it's like where I want it to be. And if you have other owners who don't do the same thing, then it kind of can get frustrating when they don't believe in that same mentality. So I realized after a while when we started crushing it, like, man, I'm doing everything. Like I'm the reason why this is happening. Like I'm doing it all. And like some of these guys like aren't really doing much. And it's not really fair. Like something's got to give here. Either like they should step up and do more, or, I should get more equity, or, like let's get rid of an owner that isn't doing what they should be doing, or, like who's making my job harder, or let's, like can everyone just do some more work, and, or the other option was, I was like, okay, well, can I just get like a salary before we do these equity payouts, to justify all the work I'm putting in? And they kind of just didn't want to do any of those things. And I just felt like it was unfair. I just felt like I was underappreciated, and that they kind of didn't care enough. And so I feel like they were trying to call my bluff. And at the same time, I was already like contemplating, like, okay, if I walk away, like, do I think that I could, get another stream at another casino? And at the same time, I had just started talking to Nick, my partner, about it. Like, he was like, yeah, like, I think you could do it. Like I'd be interested. And, we kind of started talking. And so I just pulled the trigger and I said, all right, I'm walking away. Like I'm not happy. I believe that you need to be happy. And, I can't do something that I'm not happy at. I believe in myself enough that wherever I go, I'm going to be successful. And I just cold walked away one day. I sent them an email and said, I'm done. I'm putting my resignation letter in. They couldn't believe it. And that was it. And then after that, it was kind of awkward until I was like officially out. But that was pretty much it. And I just couldn't stay there and be unhappy. Like I had to do. It was scary. I was really worried about like what was going to happen, but I just knew in my heart that it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then I know you mentioned it briefly, but how did you and Nick kind of come together with the project? You two being the primary owners. Obviously, there's a lot of people behind the scenes, producers and everything that work on the stream. But how did you and Nick come together to partner in this?
Yeah, so Nick started playing on Live with the Bike when I ran that. I had met him even before I started there, just playing at Commerce. Like when I first moved to LA, he was just like a regular, and I played there maybe once or twice, 2-3 times a week, and at like the 10-20. And so I just got to know him a little bit just from playing with him. And then I got him on the show maybe summer of 2017. And he quickly became a regular on the show every Friday. And, back then, obviously, like he wasn't anywhere near the player he is now. So like games used to be built around him, those Friday games early on, those 25-50 or 5100 games. And it took him a few years to really take it serious, but now he's, as everyone can see, quite the poker player. So we just became friends because he was a regular on the show, and we would just talk all the time. It's how I am with a lot of my players. Like, it's not just a business. Like I'm also friends with most of these guys. Like we'll talk about things on the phone that have nothing to do with poker or the games. Like we'll hang out like that. There's relationships with a lot of these guys, and that's how it was with Nick back then too. And so as we became better friends, I began to like just express some of my frustrations with the business with him, because I know that he's a really successful business guy. And he would just give me advice and what he saw, or he would come to me and be like, hey, like, why are you guys doing this? Or why are you guys doing that? And I'd be like, well, I just can't, like, they don't let me, like, I want to. And so as I got closer to leaving, I kind of like confided in him as like one of the only guys I trusted. And he was like, yeah, like if you're not happy, just like leave, like you'll be successful wherever you go. Like you're crushing it. You're the reason why they're doing what they're doing. And he said, if you ever do decide to do something, like I would be happy to like be your partner and help. And after I left, we started setting up some meetings at other casinos and in LA, and we kind of just made our business presentation, and we came close on a couple of them. We thought that it was going to happen, and it didn't. And then COVID came, the pandemic came, and that kind of put a halt on everything because the casinos were shut down. And then during that is when I had never like put out publicly what had happened. I just, for different reasons. And I just, so people, not like people knew, but it wasn't like public. So some people didn't know that I was like actually gone from there. And then when I did tweet something, Sean, the GM at Hustler, he was already following me on Twitter, and he DM'd me and was like, hey, we've been thinking about doing a streaming show for a while now. Like, I think we should talk. And so me and Nick set up a meeting with him the next day, and right away we realized like this is the place we want to do it. And so it worked out, and we, just executed it quickly, put our plan together over the next few months, and then once we did that, we took our time because we wanted to make it perfect and we didn't want to rush into it. So we ended up launching in August of the next year because we did a lot of training and there's just a lot that went into making sure that we were really ready to go before we were on the air. We didn't want to rush it, and we wanted to make sure we had like a excellent product right from day one.
Right. Cool. Yeah. I mean, I think one thing you said there was pretty interesting. How many other casinos were you considering to, start another live stream with? And I think you mentioned you presented to other casinos.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Like there's 5 major card rooms in LA, right? And we met with all of them except for Hustler. For whatever reason, we just like, it didn't cross our mind as like one that we were going to like, some of the other ones. What's that?
I said I was just, wow, that's kind of surprising because it's funny,
like, Yeah, like some of the other ones in LA had recently renovated and, were big. And, Hustler, like they didn't have, they never really got like bigger than 5-5 very often, 5-10 once in a while before the pandemic. And so it wasn't like a card room that we like thought about like, hey, like, let's go to them. We just thought about the other ones first. And then when Sean came to us, we're like, wow, like we started talking to him. We're like, man, like this guy gets it. Like, this is perfect. Like it was just like meant to be how it worked out. And then we talked to the management and people that make decisions there. And we're like, man, like this is the place. And we can like take this place and really build it up, not just have a great stream, but also help build this into the best poker room in LA. Like there's a lot of potential there. And we've seen it now that we've started. And like, not only do we have the show, but people are starting to come to Hustler and play off camera. And, there's big games going sometimes. And it's, it feels good not only to see how great the show is, but also to see, the impact we can have to help build the casino up as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's a huge difference going from playing normally highest games were 5-5. And now you've got, 100, 200, 400.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. That's insane. So kind of want to touch on what goes into, I know your background, you with ESPN and everything gave you some good insight into maybe, making games and being a people person and knowing how to deal with different personalities and that type of thing. What kind of goes into making a game for something like, Hustler Casino Live and these shows?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. It's nonstop work. So I'm planning 5 lineups a week, most weeks. And, we have our base set of core players for these. So there's like 2 different, there's like multiple different player pools basically that I have to divide it into. And then a lot of the players overlap. So there's like a Friday player pool, right? Which are guys that want to play big. They want to play 51, 1-2. These are guys that I don't invite to like a 25-50 or a 5-5-50 game or a 10-20 game, right? They just want to play big. Then there's the guys that want to play those mid stakes games, so to speak. They're not really mid because they're big, but the 5-5-50, the 25-50, right? And so that's the huge player pool. That's the player pool that I've always had like the most players in my Rolodex for over the last few years. Anywhere from like 10-20 to 25-50. And then some of those guys also sometimes want to play big too. And then the 10-20 game, which has become our smallest game now, some of those guys, plus there's like other people that I'll just like give a chance to who don't play on the street much. So there's some games that are planned like well in advance for a certain date, and then there's just the regular games each week. And I kind of, for the most part, don't really think about the next week's lineups until the weekend, because I'm so busy during the week planning the games and producing that I just can't really think about like who's in next Tuesday, unless there's just somebody that's not a regular that's flying in that I already said okay to, and I have them on the list. Otherwise, I figured out Saturday and Sunday. And so over the weekend, I start thinking about like, okay, what are we gonna do Monday? Tuesday and Thursday are already set. That's a consistent game. What are we doing Wednesday? Okay, Friday, what stakes should we do based on who's available? And I kind of start from the most important players, like the big action players, the core players who are like stars of the show, those types of players. I start with them to build it up, right? Then from there I go, okay, like who can I think of that I can add to this lineup to make it even better? Some big action players, someone fun, and sometimes people will reach out to me. Like there's some regular players that say, hey, can I play Tuesday, Thursday next week? And then a lot of them, I reach out to them and I'm like, hey, what day do you want to play next week? Or, hey, here's the lineups. Like, do you want to play Tuesday? Like, here's what we're playing. And I kind of just go from there. And after I do all that, I figure out like how many seats do I have left? And then I kind of figure out like who's in like the next tier of players that I can ask. And I kind of just have tiers, so to speak, in my head of where these players fit, right? So, you have like your top tier is like, or your first tier might be, guys like Barry and Wesley, who like are honestly like pretty good a lot of the time, but like they're good players, but they're fun to play with, and they're stars of the show, right? So they're always going to get seats. Guys like that, like they're not necessarily the biggest action or worst players or anything like that, but they're just stars of the show because of different reasons, and they're always going to get their seats. So Barry, Wesley, Ronnie's like winning a lot in these games, I think too. Nick Vertucci, obviously, as a co-owner of the show, is playing every Tuesday, Thursday. Ludacris, like a Poker Bunny, who's been playing lately. She's very good player, but, she's going to get us a lot of views. So if there's a day that she can play, she'll be guaranteed a seat first, right? Dr. Eli, guys like that. So it could be for all different reasons, but those are like the tier one players who I try to see how many of them are in first. Then we go to like the next tier, like, okay, like who's going to fill the next seats. And then if there's like one or two seats left at the end, then I try to think outside the box. Like, who can I ask? Like, who will be good to fit in this game? So yeah, it's a big process. Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes it's like last minute, night before, morning of, I'm trying to fill that last one or two seats. And that's when I have like a couple people maybe who are reliable last minute, who I can always ask just to be a seat filler. But yeah, it's definitely a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting. You only plan it basically the week of, like Saturday, Sunday, and then you're planning it for that week, next week, right?
Yeah.
You're not planning too far in advance.
Yeah, I mean, I used to a few years ago plan a lot of lineups like a couple weeks in advance, but now it's just there's so many core players who just kind of get seats regularly, and then also just the fact that we have so many games during the week that I'm so busy that it's just the only way I could do it is just by figuring out the weekend before.
Yeah. Is there specific criteria you look for? I mean, obviously you have the regular players like you named that are playing these games most often, but like, what's the vetting process like, when considering someone in these games? Are you mainly looking for action? Are you looking for, that they're going to be good for the stream? Kind of what's that main criteria look like?
Sure. There's no like exact formula, but, we definitely want players who are going to be some combination of these things, right? They're like really good action, not very good at poker, right? Like clearly very recreational. They have like the money to play where they're not just going to like fire like one small bullet and leave, right? So they have, enough money where they're going to keep reloading and be in for a lot if they need to be. Social, talkative personality. That's important. And then like, there's also another factor for if I was giving somebody a shot where, let's say they're somebody notable or they have a lot of followers on social media or, something like that, that could play into it as well. But other than that, which is once in a while for, then you just, social, fun, have money, play deep, or just like capable of losing a lot, good action, all of those things. And so when somebody random reaches out to me, which as you can imagine happens a lot on social media, or they get my number from somebody or whatever, it's tough because I've had such a high percentage of people who I've given a random chance to play, who've kind of like failed as far as, being great for the game and someone that I will continue to invite. So I have to be really hesitant, and I'll ask them questions, and then maybe I'll like Google their name to see what comes up, if anything about poker comes up, or things like that. And sometimes I just go with my hunch, I look at their social media. Sometimes I just go with my hunch, and I just like, I feel like this person, just based on what they're saying, I feel like this guy's gonna be good for the game or good for the show at least. And sometimes I'm just like, and it's just we never necessarily like need new players because there's just so many players already. Like I've met, me and Nick have met like, basically every player in LA over the last few years. Like from just playing casino, playing private games, just everything. And so we don't really need new players necessarily, but it's always good to have them because as time goes on, some players drop out of the player pool, right? Some people take breaks, and it's always good to have more. But, constantly I just have to be careful on who I give a chance to. And that's why sometimes I'll take a chance in like a 10-20 game and bring a new player in there. And then if I see that they're, oh, wow, this guy's like super fun, then I might invite him to the next biggest game. So.
Yeah, that all makes sense. And you mentioned like those guests with followings and everything. I thought about, like Adam 22 and like Ryan Garcia. Like these are kind of guys you're talking about. And I think it's pretty cool, having those kind of influencers, celebrity types. I mean, Ryan Garcia is a huge time boxer, right? Having these guys on stream is definitely good. Is there anyone that you haven't had on stream yet that you really are looking to get on stream? I know you tweeted previously about Mr. Beast. That would be a cool one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that would be a cool one to get on there. I know he plays poker. I want to make a video about him because he's been in the poker world like recently. But yeah, could you touch on that?
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Beast is definitely probably number one as far as wish list. I've been trying to just find a direct connection to him, somebody that can help get him. I know he plays a lot of poker. I know people that have played with him. It's just, if somebody put me in contact with him, I feel like I could like talk to him and convince him, but you gotta get that foot in the door, right? So I'm hoping to run into him sometime in Vegas or somebody that has a good connection to him. And I'm optimistic that one day we will get him on Hustler Casino Live.
Do you know Helmuth? He was playing with them, right?
Yeah. I'm pretty close with Phil, but I just haven't asked Phil to get him for me. But maybe one day.
Yeah. Maybe Phil will see this interview.
Yeah. Phil might play on the show soon, actually. So we'll see. Maybe after Phil plays in the show, I'll ask him. But So Mr. Beast. I mean, there's a lot of like mainstream celebrities that are like so big, but I know that they play some poker. It would be super cool. Like someone like Justin Bieber, I know has played poker, and I feel like that would just be amazing. He's probably one of the biggest celebrities in the world. Steph Curry, I know plays a little bit of poker, one of the best NBA players of all time. And I used to be close with his brother, Seth Curry, and he plays a lot of poker. And I've had him on my show a few years ago. And so that's someone that I think would be super cool one day. Kevin Hart obviously plays a lot of poker. He plays in a lot of private games in LA. I don't know how willing he is these days to like play on camera, but I know people that know him. But he's just such a massive celebrity that it's just tough, you know? So those are guys that are on like the extreme wish list. Within poker, once we got Ivy and Dwan, like I was like, all right, we got everyone. Like that's those are to me, like a few years ago, I was like, man, it would be sick to get Tom Dwan one day, you know, and now he's been on twice. So that's pretty cool to me. And I think we'll get, you know, Phil, we'll get Negranu. But to me, Phil and Ivy and Dwan were like the pinnacle in terms of like coolest poker players to have on the stream.
Yeah. Is it just, you know, I guess creating relationships, knowing people who know people and, you know, that kind of thing. But also, is there things that you have to like accommodate, you know, bigger names to get them and that kind of thing? Like, just kind of wondering, you know, what goes into getting these bigger names like Phil and Tom Dwan and all that.
Yeah. Well, for them, I didn't even really have to do much. They didn't ask for anything, which is really cool. So they weren't divas at all or anything like that. So basically they work for a company that I know some of the heads of. And I reached out to, so it's Poker King Media, and I reached out to some of them because they're just poker players that I've known that I know work for that company, and they work with Ivy and Dwan. I reached out to them back in like July before we ever launched the show. And I said, hey, you know, our show's starting soon. Would it be possible to get Ivy and Dwan on the show? Like, that would be pretty cool. And they were like, yeah, it's possible. Like, we might be able to do something. I'm like, okay. So I just kept in contact with them over the next few months. So we kind of kept talking about it. And eventually they were able to find a week that Ivy would play. And so they didn't ask for anything other than just to be able to, like, you know, use some of our videos for highlights and things like that. And then Dwan, they were trying to get as well, but Dwan like just didn't commit for that week with Ivy. But I'm like, all right, whatever, we'll get Dwan another time. And then the night before the Ivy game, a guy that I know that plays private games in LA who knows Dwan, who plays like short deck with him. He's with him at a game, and he texts me. He knows we have the Ivy game the next day, and he's like, hey, like, Tom wants to play tomorrow. And I'm like, what? Okay, yeah. So he like connected me with them, put me in like a group text, and then Tom, of course, ended up like not coming that day, but he ended up coming the next day. So it's all good, you know, because he ended up coming that Saturday. But yeah, like, so that actually came through because of the connection I had to like a friend of mine, like a guy that plays in private games. So yeah, like they didn't ask for anything, and that was pretty cool. They were like super cool. There are players sometimes who, I mean, we can't really like offer much to put out there. Like, we've never in any of my games in the past or Hustler Casino Live, we've never like paid a player to play. It's never happened. It's just not a thing. We've like comped their hotel, things like that, but that's really it. We don't have like some massive budget where we can pay somebody some crazy fee that is in line with playing a high stakes game. So luckily, most of these guys are all really cool, and they don't ask for anything, and they just want to play poker, and they respect how good our show is and the quality of the lineups and all of that. And like, most of these guys just are down to play and don't really ask for anything.
Yeah, that leads me into one of the, you know, fan questions I got online, but they were basically asking, what are some of the most ridiculous accommodations players have asked as a stipulation for playing in the game? Has there been anyone that's made any crazy requests?
No, like, honestly, nobody's asked for anything. Like, I mean, you know, we've only had like Hustler Casino Live. We've only had like big names like Ivy, Dwan, Ryan Garcia, you know, a few other people. But none of them asked for a single thing, like, at all. Like, they just want to play poker. Like Ryan Garcia, like, no, he just nothing. You know, he came, played. Ivy, Dwan, nothing. Like, yeah. I mean, like I said, the only thing I've ever even like offered anyone really is a comp hotel room. If someone was flying in, a few years ago when I did Live at the Bike, and I really wanted to get Bill Perkins on a show, and I was trying to convince him. I offered him, said, "Hey, get you a hotel. I'll pay for your flight." He said like he's with his family. I was like, I'll send your family to like Disneyland, like I was just like, I really wanted to get him on the show. And so he said, okay. And he came, but he came and played. And then afterwards, like he didn't even like ask. So he said, okay, and took the deal. But then afterwards, he didn't even like ask for the Disneyland. Like, so he said yes, but then afterwards he just played and didn't really ask for anything. So, we paid for the other stuff anyway, but point is like, yeah, most of these guys just aren't like high maintenance like you would think. Maybe some of the like massive celebrities would be, but the guys that I've dealt with so far, they just love playing poker.
That's
and
cool.
Luckily I haven't had to give them anything.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, and so much of the stream I think is built around these like personalities, right? Like these it's kind of like almost a reality show where you develop like people's personalities and get more information of their background, things like that, right? Kind of wanted to see if you could just touch on, that aspect of the stream. You've got, My Life is Bliff from Armenian Mike. That's like a big meme. I saw that kind of like footage you guys put together, which is pretty funny. And, I just think that's a pretty interesting part of the stream that is developing. It's always developing. I know you guys used to do interviews with players, like a lot of like, after the hands or whatever. Is there more plans to do things like that to develop, that kind of character arc? And I just want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of the show. I've always felt that developing these characters and making them into stars is huge. Like if you watch a poker show and they just have different players every week and random people, like people aren't going to come back and watch because they don't get attached to them. When you watch a soap opera on TV, right? People like that watch them, they come back the next day because they want to find out what's going to happen next, right? And it's the same characters. So I've always believed that character development is a huge part of this. And so that's why, obviously people that watch the show, like there's always people that complain about something, right? Like no one's ever happy. Everyone's not always happy, why don't you do this? Why do you do this? Whatever. So there's always people that complain and say something like, oh, why is it always the same people every week? I'm bored of seeing, I don't want to watch the same 10 people. Well, that's why you're watching. And that's why we have thousands of people watching, because they want to find out what's going to happen with Chris and Nick this week. What's going to happen with Barry? What's Barry going to say about the incident? Or, what's going to happen with Garrett and Dylan on Friday?
Yeah.
So like, oh, is Armenian Mike going to like flip out again? So these are just like these are real people that are just being themselves. And it's just a poker game that we're like, there's nothing I'm doing to encourage or produce situations or anything like that. It's just I organize a game, they come and they play, we mic them up, boom, that's it.
Yeah, I've seen crazy comments where people think that like things are set up like, this guy was in on it who was looking at Barry's cards, or the stream knew about it, or they set this up with the slow roll for the drama, and I mentioned your tweet in one of my videos, but basically you're saying these are random poker games, like anything can happen, like is that, it's obviously true, right?
Yeah, I mean, like literally all I do is just build lineups. All right, you in? All right, cool, come play. They get there, hey, what's up? All right, get chips. All right, we're gonna mic you up. All right, good luck. Literally that's it. Like there's nothing else. If anything, once in a while we have to like talk to people on the side about like toning it down if they're like saying things that are inappropriate or whatever, but that's rare. But yeah, like an Armenian Mike situation, something happens, we might pull them aside and be like, dude, like, come on, man, you can't do that. But yeah, I mean, it's really just very just natural. Like, here's the game, come play. All right. Like I tell people, all this is this is a LA private game that we just happen to be broadcasting so you guys can watch. So a lot of times like fans feel like they're attached and they have like control over what we're doing. And like, I'm not going to watch if you keep doing this, or if you keep showing this, or you better change this. And it's like, all right, relax. Like this is our games. We're just running private games that we happen to let you all watch. And you just have a glimpse over an LA private game that's produced in high quality. And that's all it is. And these guys play because they like the lineups, they like the game, they like the atmosphere. You know, some of them like being on stream, right? But it's really just a private game that you happen to be able to watch. And so, you know, like even when people are sitting at the table, like they don't even sometimes realize they're on camera, they forget. So that's why when they say some of the outlandish things they say, because some of them probably don't think about it. We don't have like, well, on Fridays we have one roaming cameraman sometimes, but generally it's just there's cameras in the pillars, like in the walls, and so you know there's lights, but a lot of times people are just in the moment or just playing poker, not thinking about the fact that people are watching. It just doesn't cross your mind sometimes. But yeah, going back to the character development thing, it's just about embracing what these people do, promoting it, bringing them back, you know, like Barry, you know, he's great for a lot of different reasons for the show. And, you know, he created this saying where he just says like, I ain't got nothing else to do, or I ain't doing nothing else. Right.
Yeah.
And so we just embrace that. Right. And so, you know, the other day, like we put a graphic up introducing him below his name and said, he ain't doing nothing else, you know, or we tweet out like, come watch the show. You ain't doing nothing else, you know, and then other players start saying it and it just becomes a thing. And now, he was talking about in the interview with you, like he goes to Vegas and people just go up to him and they're like, oh, I ain't doing nothing else.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's cool. And the Armenian Mike thing, right? We convinced him to do an interview, which he used to be really weird about being mic'd up and all of that. But he was in a good mood one day. We're like, hey, Mike, please, like, just let us do an interview, you know? And so we do it. And he's like in this great mood. And he just says, you know, be like, you know, my whole life is bluff. And we air it and we realize like how funny that is and how much everyone's talking about it all of a sudden every day on the show that we run that interview. And we're like, man, like we just got to embrace this. So now we're making shirts that should be out in the next couple of weeks, like a bunch of different shirts related to Life is Bluff. And then, you know, we have like this video, this part of our intro that's like a techno remix of Life is, My Whole Life is Bluff. So yeah, we're just embracing something that happened.
Quick question about Armenian Mike. He is the same guy that did the whole joke bet with you at Live at the Bike, right?
Yeah.
I know people will ask about this. So, you know, maybe some people would take that if they were in your shoes and be like, you know, I'm never including this guy in a game again.
Right.
Like, you know, this was clearly like, you know, Joey Ingram made a big video about that. This was clearly something that was, you know, huge and not cool. What was your thought process and decision making, you know, in terms of letting him come back and things like that?
Sure. So I know that there's a lot of like criticism of that sometimes, but so yeah, that happened in 2018. And then like after that happened, we just didn't talk for like a year and a half. It was like I was gonna back then like not have him on the show, at least for the time being. Wasn't sure what we were gonna do long term, whatever. Obviously that was a big deal back then, but he just never even like called after that. I think he just knew that he messed up. And then after a while, he like, you know, I told people that were close to him, like, hey, just tell him like it's all good, like it's fine. And you know, I don't know, to me, like sometimes people think things are a bigger deal than they are. Like, okay, whatever, he's delusional, he's delirious, whatever you want to call it. Maybe he was angling, trying to get his money back. Maybe in his mind it was something else. I don't know. That's fine. Whatever. He paid it. It's all good. Like I get over things quickly. To me, in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't that big of a deal. There's way worse things that happen in poker than someone like trying to like desperately ask for a rebate in a hand. It was just basically what he did. So I don't know. To me, it's just like, look, he's an old man. Has some medical issues. I kind of feel for him a little bit that he just doesn't have a lot of other things going on, you know, in his life to make him like really happy. He just, you know, he's got a good family, but you know, he's retired. He just loves poker and he wants to play poker like every day almost if he can, when he's healthy, but he's also gone through a lot of medical issues where sometimes he just can't. And, like, I don't know, I have no idea like how much money he's lost in poker in his life, but he's obviously a very wealthy man. And he, is just like a staple in LA poker. And yeah, he has his like downfalls where he does things like that, or he flips out on dealers or whatever. And yeah, it sucks and it's not appropriate. It's not cool. And some people really don't like it. But, if we can get him to behave, he's like, people like playing with him. He's easy to play against for the most part. He's sometimes really good action, but a lot of times he's not. But it's not like he's like a threat. Like he's if you need a ninth seat, like he's great to have in there. He's a recreational player. He's a unique personality sometimes where he's going to say funny things and do ridiculous things. If you can keep him calm, I think he's great to have in a private game. So, I just kind of got over it after a while. I'm just like, I give people second chances. And so I got back in touch with him, and that was, so a year and a half after that, I was just organizing like off-camera games. And then when we started Hustler Casino Live, he wanted to play, and I just thought that he's a character, Yeah, a lot of people hate him, but they watch him, right? Like people love to hate that guy, right? Like they will say like, oh man, Armenian Mike, this and that, but they're there watching and commenting on him and laughing at him. And they love the interview, right? So yeah, I mean, as long as he's like in good behavior, like I don't mind having him on the show here and there. And yeah, it's an interesting relationship for sure. There are times that me and Nick have had to talk to him and be like, Mike, you can't do that, but I don't know. I guess I just like have like a special place in my heart for him, even though I get a bit frustrated when he does some of the things he does. But, I make fun of the situation too. Like there was one time on one of the shows, like a couple months ago where he was complaining all show, wanting the dealer to like scramble the cards, right? And we're just like talking to him on the side. We're like, Mike, like relax, like they're doing it, like they're doing their job. It's fine, right? But he just kept asking for a scramble, and he's losing. And so finally, late in the show, he wins a big pot, like a 60K pot or something, or 50K pot. Right now, he's winning. So now I know he's going to be in a decent mood. So we go to the food place at Hustler, and we order scrambled eggs, and I mic up Tita, who works with us. She's like our chip runner, and I give her like a script of what to say, and she brings the scrambled eggs onto the stage, and she goes to Mike. They're in it's in like a box. She goes to Mike like, "Hey, your food's here," and she's mic'd up. We have her on the audio now on the stream, and he's like, what are you talking about? I didn't order food. And she's like, yeah, your food. And he's like, I didn't order food, it's not mine. And she opens it up, and she goes somebody said you asked for scramble. and he didn't find it funny, but other people did. But that was just like making fun of the situation and like taking something that he does and making it into a joke. So I don't know, I just so a lot of people criticize us for having him on the show, but I get it. But yeah, I think that whenever we can get him to behave, I think he's good for the show. So yeah, it's pretty much the gist of it.
Yeah, I think that says a lot. I mean, if you can forgive him, the guy that had this happen to you.
I mean, it's not like, to me, that's not like cheating. It's like, this isn't cheating. This isn't like the right, like or unethical. I mean, it's not even like unethical. It's like it's just dumb. Like it's like Joey called it the worst angle ever, but it's not even, some people say it's not even like an angle. It's like you're asking for a rebate, basically, knowing that you called, right? So, or that you went all in. So it's just different. If someone's looking at someone's cards, or if someone's like marking cards, or if someone's like, gets in like a fist fight and like beats someone up, like these are, things that to me are like way worse than someone like desperately asking for a $10,000 rebate because they regret fluffing all in, like if you really think about it, it's like, all right, it's kind of weird, but it's not like the worst thing ever to happen in poker. There's way worse things. So I don't know, I just kind of give people second chances and get over it.
Yeah. I'm sure there will be some debate there in the chat.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know what you mean. Before we keep going, do you have a little bit more time? I know we're a bit past 10:45.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, cool. Just want to make sure, want to respect your time. Do you guys have any other plans to do any other games besides Hold'em or No Limit? I think, I got some comments saying it would be cool to, even do things that are maybe like showing one card only and not having the other card shown, and have like the commentators talk about, the action, like what does this guy have? Like, something other than just Hold'em, ways to spice up the stream, ways to, change it up.
Nothing like that, but we do PLO once in a while. The PLO just doesn't get as many viewers. I think we're gonna try to only do PLO mostly if we can get bigger PLO games, which we might have one next week, possibly. There might be a short deck game at some point. There's been some interest with a group of players that if this happens, it could be pretty big. And there's some interest in someone putting together like a Deuce 7 No Limit triple draw game. Or sorry, not triple draw. Deuce 7 No Limit single draw game. So yeah, if the No Limit games get so many viewers, and people are just like loving the shows and the streams right now, and it's doing well, so there's no reason to like mess with that.
Yeah.
So we really only want to do PLO or anything else if it's going to be really big, or we're gonna have some really big names in it where we can get the viewership really.
I have an idea. If Joey Ingram ever comes back,
yeah.
his return to the internet could be playing on a big stream for PLO.
It would be great.
That would be sick, right?
Yeah, he played him on my stream a few years ago, and obviously, if Joey comes back to the poker world, it's crazy. Like I used to be really close with Joey. We used to talk all the time, We'd hang out in LA and Vegas, and it's just like he just disappeared into some other world, and I haven't heard from him. I don't know, in probably like a year. So yeah, it's kind of crazy. I don't know. I hope he's doing well. I know I saw he tweeted one time, but definitely missed him because we were really close for a while, and it's kind of like he just, for whatever reason, wanted to get out of the poker world. I don't know. But when he does come back, I'm sure people will go nuts. It'll be a triumphant return. But in the meantime, it seems like you're going to try to take his spot and be the next Joe Ingram, huh?
No, not necessarily. I mean, it's kind of just like what people have been saying a little bit, just based on, I guess, the first video I made about the, Barry situation with getting his cards looked at. I guess that reminded people of Joey, but it was not necessarily my goal. We'll see though. People seem to like the content, so we'll keep
there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, just keep doing what you're doing. I've heard nothing but positive feedback about the content you're doing and your interviews and all that. So just keep doing it. And I'm sure when Joey started doing his content, he didn't have a goal in mind of where he wanted to get. He just liked doing podcasts, liked doing interviews with poker players, and then it gradually built into something really big. So I think you can do the same thing.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate that. I guess a couple final questions as we come to a close here. One interesting question I had that someone had was, what procedures do you guys have in place to ensure that nothing like the Mike Postle thing happens on your stream? Like, what kind of security things do you have going on?
Yeah, sure. So that was one of the most important things to us when we started this show, was having a really good strategy for game security and integrity. So, and honestly, I'm like shocked that other streamers don't do this. It makes no sense to me, especially with that happening. But when the players, and you can ask any of the players how it works and they'll tell you, but when the players come about 5 or 10 minutes before the show, we collect all of their cell phones. So we make sure they all give us their phones. If anybody has a smartwatch on, we also take that. And we put them in, we have like lockers on the side of the set. There's a security guard there. And then there's like a set of lockers. And so we put the phones in there, and the phones are there for the rest of the show. So players don't have their phones while they're on stage or any electronics. And then if a player needs to use their phone for whatever reason during the show, they have to get our floor man, and then he has to walk them over past security to the lockers. They can use their phone there, look at it, call, whatever. And then they have to put it back in the locker before they come back to the stage. That's our policy with the players. And then we do the same thing in the control room before anyone who works in the control room. So there's, usually it's 4 of us that work in production, and then there's a commentator or 2 commentators. Everybody that goes upstairs to the control room has to first put their phone into the lockers before the show starts. So, I don't have my phone at all during the show. I'll get my phone like after the show, and I'll have like a million texts from people for over the 5 hours. I'm used to it now, but at the beginning it was a little weird not having your phone for that long. So that's like the most important thing. And that kind of like alleviates a lot of the potential issues and optics, and making all the players feel safe and all of that.
Yeah. That's because I guess, without their phone at the table or without a phone in the, control room and all that, doesn't really seem a way that, someone could do something to, mess up the integrity of the game. So that, that was the most important thing for us, is having a really strong policy. And, like when a new player arrives, that's late or whatever, like our floor man, Louis, will tell you, I'll be on our communication system. First thing I say is, you get his phone? So that's like the most important thing, is like to never, ever have a slip up where somebody like accidentally has a phone or electronic or something on them when they get to the table. And so we check them all. We have like strong security stance. We check them all before they come on the stage, before the show starts. And same thing with everybody in the control room. And that way there's just like optically and whatever, we have no issues. All the players feel safe. And we're going to continue to have that. And if there's ever like something where people are like, well, you should do this too, we're going to do it. Because if you don't have strong security, then if you don't have good strong integrity, then like, it's just, your show is going to fall apart. People aren't going to want to play. You saw what happened up there, obviously at Stones, and you just can't have that. And, the most important thing is just having everyone feel safe and having like a fair game. And that's like number one ahead of everything for us. For sure. And then with the whole, situations that have happened recently, obviously the one with Barry, with someone looking at his cards, and then we have, the slow roll. Obviously that's not cheating. It's just a slow roll with Garrett and Dylan. I know people are going to ask me just to get your overall thoughts and comments on everything that happened, with the Barry situation and then with the slow roll.
Just in general?
Just in general. Like, I know, you guys released a statement with the whole, Julio looking at Barry's cards. But just wanted to see if you could kind of touch on that, and then the same for the slow roll.
Sure. I mean, I've like known Julio for a few years, and just from like private games in LA, he's kind of just known in the community. And I've had like an off and on, relationship with him. And I knew that like he's not known as like the best guy or like anything like that. Like he's always like up to something or whatever. And I know that, I don't know, he has a reputation in home games, but no one ever told me like, hey, like he's a cheater. Like we caught him cheating. Like he cheats. Like no one's ever said that. So I never thought that was something. And even afterwards, when I asked a bunch of people like, hey, did you know that he could do this or that he would do that? People were like, no, like I would never heard of that. So it's not like, people in the comments are like, oh, like Ryan said, he, knows about his reputation. Like, how would he let someone like that on stream? Well, like there's a difference between people who just kind of like, whatever, like want to play like the Jack 7, I don't know if you know what that is, like the Jack 7 deuce game, right? Like to take a 53-47 edge on someone that like doesn't know, or, things like that, or, hey, like they're going to like, if they lose, they're going to like slow pay the game or whatever, like things like that. Like, okay. But like, no one's ever told me like, hey, watch out, like this guy is going to cheat on your show. Like, first of all, even if anyone ever did, why would they do it on camera on a show, right?
Yeah.
And whatever you want to call it, you want to call it cheating, you want to call it, whatever you want to call looking at someone's car, taking advantage of something unethical, whatever you want to call it. I'm not saying it is something or it is whatever. It's just wrong regardless. But no one ever told me that he has ever been caught doing something like that, and if he was, then obviously I wouldn't have him on the show. But I just thought he's like this character, he's action, people want to play with him. You can't really do anything bad on a show. And so never really thought that something could happen like that. And then it happened, obviously, allegedly. And now I realize that, like, man, like maybe that was a mistake for sure. Like, we should not have invited him if I knew he was capable of something like that, or that he would ever try to pull something like that on the show. It sucks. But I mean, he made himself look bad. And I feel bad for Barry, because Barry's like such a good guy. And like the way he handled it is just amazing. Like, most people wouldn't handle it like that. And the fact that he's just been super cool about it. And I mean, it just builds Barry up as even more of a legend, Yeah. It kind of sucks. And, some people say like, oh yeah, well, bad publicity, good publicity. Yeah. But like something like that, I don't want that. Like, sure, people are talking about our show because it's great, but not in a good way. I don't want something like that. I wish that didn't happen. And could we be like a little bit better with like picking lineups or players and evaluating like quality of a person they are? Like, sure, absolutely, I'll take responsibility for that. But at the same time, it's poker. And there's a lot of people in poker that are just like not like amazing people, right? But they're gamblers, they want to play, they're good action, and sometimes we just have to like take a chance and let them play, even if they're not great people, because like that's what poker is, right? Unfortunately, it sucks. Like, if everybody was like this great stand-up person in poker, like the games would suck, the games would be boring, there'd be no action. Unfortunately, that's how it is. There's degens. But yeah, definitely, I regret having him on the show if I knew this was going to happen. And, we'll learn from it and we'll get better going forward. That's my opinion on that. And I had like a nasty feeling about it afterwards. I was like, oh my God. And people ask about like, how do we not know during the show? Well, like, I don't know what time exactly anyone started putting it in the chat. But first of all, we're on a 1 hour delay. Okay. And that day, we were one man down in the control room. I was doing the graphics, which I normally am overseeing everything. So normally I'm overseeing everything and I have control of, I can see the chat. But that day, nobody was, because we were one man down and I was doing graphics. And so we weren't looking at the chat much. And no one told us anything. And then at 9 o'clock is when the game ends. At 9 o'clock, I went downstairs. That's when I started talking to the players. We get the mics, all of that, blah, blah, blah. Then shortly after that, so occasionally I'll like jump into the game afterwards, maybe once a week or so. Like, I'll play with them afterwards, depending on the situation. So that day I sat down and I ended up playing a little bit with them. They wanted me to keep the game going. They were like four-handed. And so by like 9:15, I was like playing, and I went back upstairs to end the stream at like 9:50 for the last few minutes of the show. And at that, or maybe it was even later than that, it was like 9:55. And at that time is when the commentators told me like, hey, people in the chat are saying this, we said to just put the, time codes in afterwards and we'll check it out. And I was like, really? That was literally the first time anybody told me anything, was at 9:55. So that's the end of the show. And even if the commentators earlier had like alerted me, which they didn't, it was still the last hour of the show, 1 hour delay. So to my knowledge, there was nothing significant that was put in there, before that 9 o'clock mark in which we could have done anything about it. And even if it had been in there, right, like it'd be hard to believe initially. And so we'd have to go like check it out and look at the clips.
It's a hard thing to judge.
Like that's a big thing. We'd be like, hey, people think you might have done this, so they go, how do we even handle it, right? So so just the way it developed, we didn't have a chance to do anything about it until after the show. And then the first thing I did is once I saw a bunch of the evidence, I called Barry and I was like, hey, Barry, like just letting you know this is a thing. This is what people are talking about before people like text you. And I just want to let you know. And he's like, oh, that makes so much sense now. And he's like, I'm good with it. It's cool. It's my fault for not protecting my cards. But like this, I'm glad that you told me because like this makes more sense now because I was wondering like how this guy was able to like play all those crazy hands. And then it obviously developed into something big after that. So yeah, that was that thing. The Dylan Garrett thing. Yeah, when that happened, I'm in there producing and watching the hand, and I'm like, "Oh my God, are you kidding me? Like to do that, to do it in a high stakes game in a huge pot, and do it to Garrett of all people. Like I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe that this just happened. This is insane. And it wasn't even that crazy in the grand scheme of slow rolls that I've seen, but to do that in a 186K pot on a Friday game with all these people watching, and to do it to Garrett, who's like America's hero, you know, he's like the Steph Curry of like live stream poker, you know, and I'm like, wow. Instantly I said to my staff, I said, man, this is going to blow up the internet. Like I just know, right? It was the same feeling as when the Armenian Mike thing happened to me a few years ago, right? It's like, as soon as it happened, when this happened, I'm like, this is going to blow up the internet. I just know how it works. Like, this is a big deal. And so then shortly after that, I saw like Garrett took a break. He walked away from the stage to like get food on the side. And I just went down and I just down there to like, I don't know. I was like, hey, like, how are you doing? And he's like, I'm fine. And I was like, okay, like, you know, I just want to make sure, like, you know, that was kind of crazy. And he's like, yeah, no big deal, like, whatever. He's like, it doesn't mean anything. Like, I don't know. He was just like, yeah, he was just like shrugging it off, like, it's no big deal. I'm like, okay, cool.
Most people could not do that, and I doubt I would even be able to react like that. It's like, you know, it's like,
yeah, it was crazy. And then, yeah, and then we talked about it after the show and all that. But I just knew that as soon as it happened, this was going to be like a huge deal. And so, you know, once it happened, we embraced it and we're like, all right, let's make a video of it. And let's, you know, everyone, obviously you made a video, a lot of other people made a video about it. And, you know, once things like that is like a slow roll doesn't affect the game obviously at all.
It's not that big of a deal in the grand scheme.
It's kind of just like funny / an insult / bad etiquette. Something like that we're okay like promoting and grasping, you know, like it's not looking at someone's cards. Like it can be part of the, you know, slow rolling is just like, all right, whatever. It was a moment.
It's interesting. It's like, it's something that doesn't really happen that often in poker, but when it does, it's like, you know, wow, you know, it's in bad taste, but it's like Dylan thought it would be funny, or he just thought that there was value in getting under Garrett's skin, I guess, one of the two. Yeah, I mean, we might as well embrace it after that. So now we're building up this rivalry between Garrett and Dylan. They're going to play again this Friday. And we put out like a promo video on it. And yeah, so you know, I talked to Garrett afterwards about it and he was fine with it. He's like, look, he's like, it doesn't affect it. Like he kind of explained how he challenges himself to, in those situations, to keep cool and to not react. Like he finds it a fun challenge to see if he can just like be zen and be the bigger man there. And obviously he did. That makes sense. I mean, it could, like, imagine Garrett did react and like he was like, what the fuck? Like I feel like that would just make him look not nearly as good as how he looks now, which is like just like Kobe, like stone cold, nothing, right?
And he fakes the ball. I mean,
yeah, it's amazing. People love it. People love that he was able to handle it so well, because everybody knows that most of the people out there, most of us, would not handle it that well.
Yeah, that's cool. Cool. Well, I think that basically wraps it up. Talked about a lot of stuff, a lot of awesome topics. Before we go, all the Ryan Feldman fans out there, what do you have to say? Any last words? I know you mentioned in your previous interview, you said, you know, one of the most important things to you in poker is kind of building a legacy and recognition for, you know, what you've provided to the community and things like that. Any last words on that? Any final words?
That's definitely really important to me. That's always been important to me. I value that as much as anything. And, you know, I just, I like being known as the guy who builds the great show and the good games. And, I love being the guy who players can come to and be like, man, like I love playing a show and I love your games and all that. And, when I go to Vegas and people come up to me and they're like, yo, your show's sick. Like, I love that stuff. And yeah, at the end of the day, like, I feel like we should all want to be remembered for something. And I want to be remembered for this. And so it's always been more important than money or anything, is just having a legacy, building the best poker show in the world. And I think Nick and I have done that together. And I couldn't do it without Nick. And he's been extremely instrumental in this. And, I think that we've just been like a power team together. And we only have we're only going up from here. So we have like huge plans. We're just getting started. We have a lot of big things still in the works, and like, who knows where we'll be 2-3 years from now. So it's only been about 6.5 months or so, not even 7 months yet. So I'm just excited about the future. I'm excited about, just adding on to this. Like, we have amazing quality right now, but we're just going to keep trying to find ways to get to the next level and add different elements to the show. And so I'm excited about that. I'm excited about what we're going to be in the future. And we're just going to continue bringing everybody 5 days a week of premium poker content for free that you can watch, and that's never going to change. And games are going to keep getting bigger and better. And I'm happy, and I'm just happy, and I'm excited. And it's just still very surreal to me how successful this has been and how many people are watching. Just looking at the view count on like a Friday and being like, wow, we have over 10,000 people watching. This is insane. Like, I can't believe what we were able to build. So for me, like, I just every day kind of like look at it and I'm able to be like, man, like this is sick. Like, how do we do this? Like, this is so cool. So we couldn't do it without everybody out there watching. And so we want to thank all the fans, all the viewers, and everybody who's supportive. And if anybody ever has ideas or feedback or anything like that, like, feel free. I read all the messages. Feel free to always like reach out to Nick or I, and just let us know. So we appreciate everyone.
For sure. If you guys have any ideas or any comments, let me know in the comments, and sure Ryan will take a look at the comments at some point. But awesome. Well, I think that does it, and just want to thank you for your time.
All right. Thanks, Alex. Appreciate it.